In you go. There's a good boy. Yeah. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. This is the dry garden. And we call it dry not because it gets any less rain, it's still a wet old garden, but because it drains really fast. And in fact, it's the only bit of Longmeadow that does have good drainage. And there's hardly any soil. But things grow, and they grow well if you choose the right plants. And in fact, last year, we gave it an overhaul. Everything came out, freshened up the soil, weeded it through, and then replanted. So here we are. This is 1 year's growth. It's a little bit lower than the rest of the garden, but I love that sort of undulating tapestry of varying greens, just touched with colour. The irises coming through, a little bit of comfrey, daisies, and of course that rose, Madame Gregoire Steichler, on the wall, which is just coming into flower. In fact, I was looking at it a minute or two ago, and I saw a blue tit pop in a hole, and closer look, I can see there's a little nest inside the wall behind the rose. So it's a gentle part of the garden, but with its own real charm. Now, in tonight's programme, I will be planting out my blight-resistant outdoor tomatoes and also planting out the giant sunflowers.
This week, we're visiting two very different gardens. Both are open this weekend as part of the National Gardens Festival. One is a very wet garden in Cumbria.
You work in an area, and when you leave it, it shouldn't look as though you've worked in it. That's really the fundamental thing behind our style of gardening.
And Carol visits a very steep, dry garden near Bedford.
Do you have to abseil?
Not quite.
It obviously keeps you fit.
Yes, walking up and down the slope with a few barrows of soil. Who needs the gym?
3 weeks ago, I installed a top bar beehive in my orchard, and now it's swarming season. And a local beekeeper, Gareth Baker, has arrived with a swarm for me. So Nigel's been told to stay inside for the time being.
Right, so fill me in, Gareth, on what we're going to do.
Well, we've got the skep there.
Right.
Swarm of bees. We have got an amazing amount of bees in here. 5,000, 10,000.
Oh, look at them.
Maybe more.
How dangerous is that?
These bees have got nothing to protect, no point to prove. They're just looking to move house. And the sooner they're ensconced somewhere nice, warm and dry.
Well, I've got a nice, warm, dry top bar hive, so what do? So you're tipping them out?
Yeah, we just gently tip them out on the ramp, and the bees will just gently run up the ramp.
Look at that. How extraordinary is that? What an amazing thing. And you collected that swarm, did you?
That was a beautiful swarm of bees hanging in the tree, put the skep underneath, shook the branch, they all dropped in, and away they went.
And in terms of beekeeping, what do we need to do? Because if you come with a swarm and put it on there, what's the next step in terms of management?
The one thing that's brilliant about Britain is we've got a vast array of beekeeping associations and groups. So there's all that information, mentoring and assistance as to what you can get done with your bees, where to put them.
So if anybody wants to do this, contact your local Beekeepers Association and they will guide you and instruct you and maybe give you courses that you can follow.
There's a vast array of all sorts of courses.
So is it best now just to leave them, or do we have to stand and guide them until they're all in?
It's one of the things we leave the bees to get on with what bees get on with best.
And if they're flying around like this, how likely are they to sting? Because a lot of people are worried about that.
No. With a swarm, they're exceptionally gentle. However, if you've got a swarm of bees in your garden, get hold of the local beekeeping association. The British Beekeeping Association actually got a swarm line that you can get hold of somebody that will then come around and remove the swarm and rehouse it somewhere else.
What I'm fascinated by is how they are organising themselves.
Yeah.
You know, you can see this drift up. Look, they're beginning to collect around the mouth.
Yeah, here we go. They're
starting to go in, aren't they? Look at that. There they go. It's like sand going through an egg timer, isn't it? They can't get in quick enough, can they? These are worker bees?
All the workers are females, all unfertilised females. There's a few drones in here, which are the male bees, which are larger, fatter bees. and the drones don't sting. The queen is about a third longer than a worker
And
bee.
there is one queen per swarm.
That's it.
Right.
And if you guys
Oh, I see, there's the queen.
she's a bit shy and cold, so
Yeah.
she's just burrowing under the bees. One of the amazing things about gardens is when you look at the countryside, it's green. When you look at, you know, aerial views of gardens, they're just awash with forage.
Right. If we were in an urban or even suburban back garden, we could have 50 different households within the bees' range.
Yes.
Or more. How does that change things?
But yeah, urban beekeeping is obviously not quite as straightforward as rural beekeeping, but bees have existed in towns and cities for years, whether it be in your back garden or in the church steeple. You have to be aware of people. You know, if you're a bit concerned, get hold of local associations, because none of us want bees to be in the press for the wrong reasons.
Right. So gardens and bees make very good companions. Well, we'll let those do their thing for a bit. We're going to have a cup of tea. And Gareth, thank you very much indeed for coming and helping me out. I shall probably be on the phone asking for more advice.
I'm always there, but this will go according to plan.
Brilliant. Now, we went to visit a garden in the Lake District made by David Kinsman and Diane Hewitt, where not only is extreme skill shown by the gardeners, but at every opportunity, they've encouraged nature to play just as an active a part.
We moved here in 1981. It was pretty well derelict, and we gradually worked our way through, up the hill, round the land. We planted a few plants, but apart from that, we've not really interfered with it very much.
That's part of our gardening philosophy. You work in an area, and when you leave it, it shouldn't look as though you've worked in it. Let the plants tell you the story. Let the mosses tell you the story. That's really, I think, the fundamental thing behind our style of gardening.
We knew the quarry was here, and we knew it had been a garbage tip for 200 or 300 years. It had been filled up with old refrigerators and washing machines. We'd been to Japan, we'd seen Japanese gardens, and we liked the idea of that being a Japanese-influenced area, but we let it go, we let the mosses and everything else take over.
Japanese gardeners dominate the landscape, but we've done very little. So it's a very different approach, giving, in some ways, a rather similar end product. The northwest of England, Lakeland, has a very wet climate, and here we get about 70 inches of rain a year. We're surrounded by plants that thrive under those temperate rainforest conditions. Many different types of rhododendron, for example. Enkianthus just by us here. Many different sorts of camellias. All these plants are able to withstand the rainfall, in fact, enjoy the rainfall. Most of them are rather shallow-rooted, which is good because we have very little soil here on this hillside. We've done really very little except stand back and watch. The area is predominantly now populated by one of our native mosses, the common one in this garden, Polytrichum formosum. It just will slowly cover any horizontal surface or anywhere with just a little bit of soil. And the Polytrichum, from about now onwards, will develop its little spore capsules, which are a golden color. It's really beautiful and very different from what it looked like a month ago. We've not moved or planted any ferns or mosses or lichens. We've looked at what's arrived, and then we've tweaked it. What we do is to clear leaves and fallen twigs and so on off the surface, because these plants still need light. and otherwise sit back on a seat and enjoy what has arrived.
This is the most formal part of the garden, and it's the last part of the garden we actually did anything with. We knew from the 1910 OS map that there was a spring here, so David built this grotto, and then we realised that the grotto area was being colonised by this. It's a British native. Started off as a small patch, has spread. We like them. They like us. If they want to live and we want them, then we just have it and they go for it.
The moss path started life as an access route down between some birch trees. But over time, the mosses built up into these beautiful mounds. And then about 10 years ago, we thought it would look good with a little bit of gravel down the middle, slightly narrower at the top, wider lower down, so it gave you the sense of a river increasing in volume down the hill. We pass it every time we go up into the wood, and your head always swings round to check the moss path is still there. We're only custodians, so all of us on Earth just occupy a small amount of space, and we're not going to be here for very long.
It's not a legacy. In 30 years' time, it should just go
like
back.
Like us, it should decay slowly and gracefully.
Or disgracefully, please.
Windy Hall is just one of the gardens you can visit this weekend.
I love that garden. And certainly, if I'm up in that part of the world, I'll want to go and visit it. I sowed a number of giant sunflowers, and I'm going to plant one in each of the 4 beds in this sunny side of the cottage garden, and I will monitor their growth, and we'll see which one does the best. So, planting them is easy enough. Sunflowers will grow in most soils. They don't need any special treatment, but they do need sunshine. So don't expect them to grow so well in shade. You can see, nice plant, good root system on the outside. Funnily enough, these were watered this morning and they're dry. Now, the crucial thing is not so much the soil, because this is good soil with plenty of organic matter added over the years, but they must be staked properly from the beginning. Keep them watered, water them once a week. And if you really want to go for maximum height, you could feed them with a general purpose sort of tomato feed once a week or once a fortnight. Now, to start with, I've got a cane, but I'm expecting this to be a giant. So I have a giant stake for it. And in fact, I bet the director on tonight's programme that my sunflowers will be taller than these RSUs. Be prepared for more than a cane. A cane will not support a giant sunflower. It does need to be a stake of some kind, but we'll start with a cane like this. Put it in nice and firmly, like that. Now I've got some twine, and it's really important to tie it as it grows, because it's going to be big, it'll be top heavy, and there's a real risk of it bending and flopping, if not breaking. And if you want maximum height, it's got to grow as straight as possible. So that's Pike's Peak. And now Mongolian Giant, Kong, and Giant Yellow will go in the other 4 beds at this end of the cottage garden, and we can monitor their progress. But the planting of them will be exactly the same. And of course, I will water that in really well. This is Sweet Rocket, and we always feel that it belongs here because it pops up in the garden and was one of the very first plants that appeared as a self-sown seedling. And I love it for its exuberant, light touch. It's a plant of May and early June, and it blesses us for a few weeks and then moves on, and you get these lovely seed heads. But I can't imagine Longmeadow being without it. Now, Windy Hall, which is open this weekend as part of the National Garden Scheme Festival, is an exceptionally wet place. But Carol has been to see a garden near Bedford that is also open this weekend that is exceptionally dry.
The thing about going to any National Garden Scheme garden is you never know quite what to expect. It's always so exciting. And this looks pretty promising, doesn't it? Stop that and show me a lovely garden. It's beautiful. It's phenomenal.
Thank you. It's designed to take effect of the slope and the fact that it's a dry garden, even though it's actually raining today. Green sand is basically what this sandstone is, and we're halfway along the Green Sand Ridge Walk that goes from Leighton Buzzard to Gamlingate.
So what does that mean in terms of gardening? It's
dry, very sandy.
Free draining.
Incredibly free draining, and lots of almost builder sand.
So who's constructed these walls?
Partly my husband. We tried to keep it in keeping with the local area.
So did the slope come right down here, first of all?
Yes, the hill followed the line of that wall. So we actually had to dig out about 40 lorry loads of soil before we could even start building the house. And the garden's taken us about 20 years.
I mean, it's spectacular, you know, it's exciting when you come round the corner. It's dramatic, isn't it?
It is, and we do find when we have people that haven't been to the garden before, initially it looks like this is the garden, it looks like a courtyard space, and then they suddenly realise that actually, there's a set of steps, and then there's a footpath.
What, there's more than this?
There's more than this.
Whoa, can we go and have a look then?
Let's go see. Mind your step.
These are what you call difficult conditions, aren't they? How do you actually physically garden here, Kate?
Well,
do you have to abseil?
Not quite, but when we built the garden, we tried to put plants in so they gave you a natural space to walk through, and then you've got natural areas where you can stand on the root ball at the back. Then we've got stones that are flat that give you that space to work. And when it's been raining very heavily, it has tendency to move, and it runs down the bank.
It erodes.
And so it was really important that one of the things we had to think about when we were planting was putting plants in which will act as an anchor.
I think it's interesting that at the bottom of the bank, you've got things that actually love moisture. The Astrantias and hellebores. So quite a lot of that moisture must come down too.
If you were to do a soil test through, it's very, very dry at the top and yet still quite moist at the bottom. So we've tried to use that in the way that we've put the plants in.
Can we go on the bridge?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, in a dry garden to hear water all the time.
Wildlife needs water. And this is just such a fantastic place. You sit and you watch the birds, you watch the dragonflies in the summer, and that lovely sound of water. You get that all day.
Very, very therapeutic. Oh! Look at this! It's another garden, it's another place. You're in a different place altogether, aren't you?
I know. It's not what you probably expect from the bottom. An elliptical lawn with an elliptical retaining wall.
Yeah, which you do notice.
Yes.
Not many people have a pink wall in their garden.
No, it's as much a piece of artwork as it is a retaining structure, but it just forms the perfect foil for these fantastic plants.
I love the way you've picked up the colour of this in your planting too, your pink poppies, and even this. Even these pretty little fringe flowers of Italian too. And stuff like this Libertia, which you've seen all around your garden, is the perfect kind of plant for this kind of soil.
This one plant that obviously likes it here because it's just self-seeded everywhere.
It's a sure sign, isn't it? If something's really happy, it will seed absolutely throughout your garden. And it's lovely then because it's a link too, isn't it?
It is. It ties everything together.
Yeah. I want to see what's up there, though. There's even more.
There is more. Come on.
Come on. and into the herbaceous section. Isn't it splendid? I get the feeling this is what you really, really like. You know?
This is my style of gardening. I love herbaceous borders.
Why did you decide that you wanted to share your garden and open it for the NGS?
I get such a buzz from gardening. It's my sort of default setting when I come in from work, come out here, cup of tea, a little bit of weeding, sit and watch the space. So I want to share that with other people. I want to encourage young people to want to come into the space. And also, I'm not a runner, I'm not a baker, but I garden. So, you know, this is my marathon.
It obviously keeps you fit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, walking up and down the slope with a few barrows of soil. Who needs the gym?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nothing better, is there?
Not a thing. It's a fantastic thing to do.
The National Garden Scheme has got a special gardening festival this weekend with over 400 gardens in England and Wales open to the public. And very often there's a group of them, so you can visit 2, 3 or even 4 in one trip. Do try and get out and see some, because the best way to get inspiration for your own garden is to see what other people are doing. Now, these are some of the outdoor tomatoes that I'm testing to see if they are as blight resistant as some of them claim to be, or as blight resistant as possible. So now I'm going to plant them out into the garden. Knowing the right time to plant out outdoor tomatoes is very, very weather dependent and will vary from place to place. And what you're looking for is not the days to heat up, but the nights. I've got 2 different types here. I've got a bush type and cordon type. This one, Lassetto, is a bush. Now, essentially, bush tomatoes have lots of side shoots, and they all bear fruit, and they make a bush. And you don't try and train them in any way, because they resist training. You can see that what looks like it might be a leader, in fact, is a truss. There's no single stem that you can train up into a cordon. Whereas if I get a cordon one, like this, which is a fandango, you can see there's a nice straight stem. I haven't trained or pinched it out in any way, and it wants to grow up tall and straight. Most tomatoes are cordon, but it's very good to grow bush ones outside because they don't need training. You don't have to have a support. You can grow them in a pot, you can grow them in a window box, and you can grow them in a hanging basket, and they work perfectly well. So I'm going to grow both here. Whatever type you grow, planting them out is much the same. You want a fairly sunny site, because you're going to need sun to ripen the tomatoes, and you want to plant the tomatoes deeply, at least up to the first pair of leaves. And what happens is that the stem then grows roots, you get more feed going into the plant, and therefore better growth and better fruit, and it rocks less in the wind. So it's double gain. This bed has had lots of compost added to it. Tomatoes are quite greedy plants. Now, because this is a bush variety, I'm only going to put 2 in this space here, giving them room to develop. When I plant the cordons out, I'll get 3 in this space, because, bearing in mind, they grow upwards. And they can be planted as close together as about 15 inches. Bushes, more like 2 or even 3 foot if you've got lots of space. I'm now going to put a couple of Lizano, which is another bush type. Again, leaving a reasonable amount of space in between them. It will be tempting to add more, but one of the actions of blight, which is a fungus, is lack of airflow. So you need space between plants to let ventilation through. Cordons, on the other hand, can go a little bit closer together. This is Fandango. There is the leader. We can train that on up. So a nice deep hole. And look how deep that's going in. And I can get 3 in this space where I could only get 2 bush varieties. So the third one's going there, that one can go in the middle. Because cordons grow tall, they get floppy. And they must have support. And at this stage, all I need to do is pop a cane in
next to each one, good and firm. As they grow, I'll put cross struts to support them, but just for the moment, that's okay. Water your tomatoes in really well, and they won't need watering more than once a week. And I don't begin to feed mine for at least another month or two, not till the fruit starts to set. And now we have to wait and see, A, if they give us good fruit, and B, if they're sufficiently blight resistant to last out the summer so that fruit can ripen. Well, that's tomatoes planted. Here are some other jobs you can be getting on with this weekend. It's time to plant out any pumpkins, squashes or courgettes. They like really rich soil, so add any compost unless your ground has been well prepared. And I like to plant them in a shallow depression, which means that you can give them extra water because they are hungry, thirsty plants. This is only a small job, but it is important. If you've planted any trees or shrubs this spring, do remember to give them a really good water once a week for the rest of the summer. This is because the roots won't be established enough to provide enough moisture for the new foliage that will appear over the summer. You can go on picking rhubarb for another month or so at least, but if you see any flowering stems which tend to be circular rather than the flattened edible ones, cut them off at the base so all the energy is going into producing new, delicious shoots. The house martins are building their nests in the eaves, and they've done this every year since we've been here. So there's every reason to expect that a nest will be built, the eggs laid, the young hatched, and we might even get a second brood, but it's something the progress of the summer is measured in their activity. Let's see how these bees are doing. I got a bee swarm in my hive. How about that? And I love the idea of growing plants that the bees like, and then the bees pollinating the plants and maybe giving me honey. And this way that our gardens can work with nature and foster it. And we benefit and so do they. I could watch them for hours. However, we've run out of time. Don't forget that this weekend the National Garden Scheme has a festival with over 400 gardens. So do try and get to visit some of them, and you can get all the details from our website. Carol and Joe will be reporting from Gardener's World Live next week, but I will be back here at Longmeadow with my bees. So I'll see you then. Come on, Nudge.